Hello, hello, hello world, hello internet. Happy Thursday.
Hello.
Yeah, happy Thursday, everyone. Good morning if you're joining us from somewhere in the Americas. Good afternoon, especially for my guest today, and good evening for folks in maybe Asia Pacific and other parts of the world. I lose track of Australia where the time zone is. It's a big difference, but good evening. And yeah, thank you, folks, for joining in here at Coded Live. Welcome back. Today's Thursday, which is my favorite day because we get to talk about .NET. So my name is Basu. You see me all the time stumbling through code, but thankfully I'm not coding today. I have a very special guest with me today, Gerald Versluis. If I'm saying that last name right, Versluis?
Yeah, close enough. It's not a very foreign language friendly name, so.
All right. Well, Gerald, thank you for making the time to come on board. I'm actually super excited to welcome you here. You see a chat room is coming on slowly. Hello, 3D Polyrate. Good to see you. And everyone settle in. Hopefully you have coffee or a drink because this is going to be a lot of fun kind of diving into some new stuff. So, Gerald, why don't we start by introducing yourself? So tell us what you do. Where do you live?
Yeah, who am I? That's a good question. So my name is Gerald. I'll say it once, Versluis.
There you go.
I'm from the Netherlands, and I work at Microsoft currently. And you might know me if you are looking into that stuff, because I have been, before joining Microsoft, I've been a community member, Microsoft MVP for the ones who know what that is. So I've been actively blogging, writing articles, doing all kinds of sessions online all over the world. Then joined Microsoft on the actual Xamarin Forms team, so that was pretty cool. Right now within Microsoft, I've shifted a little bit, so I'm working on GitHub code spaces at the moment. But with the whole Xamarin stuff, I've done that for a couple of years. So I still love to do that very much. So as kind of a side hustle, it's still, backed by Microsoft, but it's also kind of a side hustle because we try to do this with the community. We now have the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So that is something that I'm driving as well in my spare time. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Yeah, and we want to dive all into it. But you make some phenomenal YouTube videos. Those are amazing. And is your Twitter handle the same as your YouTube channel?
Well, I don't know how it happened, but for some reason, my YouTube is the only thing that I didn't get to use my handle. Okay. So there it's my full kind of name. So it's Gerald and then my last name. Right. So we'll put that in the links.
Yeah, I'll post it in the chat once I get a second. But folks, if you need to get hold of Gerald, that's his Twitter handle, and you have done phenomenal work with the community. I have seen your blog posts, I've seen your videos, all the content that you create. So thank you for what you have done, and we are glad to see you kind of drive the same efforts at Microsoft and part of the Xamarin community efforts now. So before we start, where exactly are you in Netherlands?
So that's always a good question. So I'm basically at the same height as Belgium. So I'm all the way down south, basically. Yeah.
I have not been to Netherlands, which is a shame. We have a big office at Rotterdam. I've been close. So I've been to Techorama, Belgium, which happens in Antwerp. Yes. So I think if you take a train from Brussels and you're going towards Antwerp, I think the next big station is actually in Netherlands, and they speak the same languages. It's either Dutch or Belgian. Yeah.
It kind of depends on where you are in Belgium because they are split between French and Dutch. Right. But yeah, I think I'm closer to Antwerp than I am to Rotterdam. Okay. So that's where I am.
All right. Very cool. So it's mid-evening for you, probably at the end of your workday. So thank you for joining us. All right. So I keep hearing a lot about the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So tell us, what is it? Where did it start? Where are things now?
So where did it start? I think then we need to talk a little bit about .NET 6 Preview 1 came out yesterday, which has the first bits of .NET MAUI. I'll get back to that.
So
yes,
exciting.
very exciting. And that will be the evolution of what is now Xamarin Forms, right? So Xamarin Forms is, I will give a little bit of, the background story. I don't know, of course, who's watching.
Yeah, no,
Probably
please.
most people know, but, then we have an hour to fill, so I'll just talk.
Yeah.
So Xamarin Forms is like the layer on top of the Xamarin stuff, and the Xamarin stuff is basically the bindings to the native APIs of iOS and Android, and allows you to write cross-platform apps from C# on .NET with Visual Studio. So that is really cool. And then that will allow you to share all your code whenever it's written in C#.
Yep.
So you can share that between your backend if you're using ASP.NET REST APIs or something like that. Maybe some stuff on Azure, so that all integrates nicely. Then, the only thing that you still needed to do was, I'm talking 2016 now or something, is to actually, make those UI bits, so that the last little part on top of your application, you still had to do that natively. So for Android, you had to use those AXML files. For iOS, you'll be using storyboards. And that is basically what Xamarin Forms tries to solve. Like, they are putting another layer on top of those Xamarin bindings. And with that, you have an abstraction layer where you just say, hey, I want to show a button on my screen. And then it will translate, Xamarin Forms will translate that into how a button should look like on iOS or on Android or UWP or all the platforms that are supported. So that's what Xamarin Forms is. Now, I said before, I think this originates somewhere in 2016, so that's 4 or 5 years now. And maybe coincidentally, maybe not, we are now at Xamarin Forms 5. And that is the last version of Xamarin Forms as we will know it. So just today, I had a kind of like, not a discussion that has a kind of a negative vibe, but a conversation on Twitter with someone who said, like, there is a lot of stuff out there that's saying Xamarin Forms is going away and you should stop using it. I kind of understand where that comes from, but it's definitely not going away.
It's the thing, like we all do, like everything is dead. Like, no,
yeah.
It's
abandon this, go to the next thing.
Yeah. And while we are speaking, we have our friends. Hey, Luz Scott, Coding with Luz is here. Hello. Good to see you.
Luz, great.
Yeah. You are one of our favorite peoples in the community. So, and so is Luz. Thank you. Yeah, and look at that. Alan Ritchie is here. Good morning. This is like a family reunion of Xamarin love.
Good.
But yeah, a lot of things are evolving. Like you said, 5.0 is kind of the last major release, and that came out January, sometime mid-January is when it came out. And again, you're going to keep putting on more love into it, but Xamarin Forms is evolving. And like you said, like the native wrappers, like that is much more of .NET now. That's going to be .NET iOS and .NET Android.
Exactly, and that's going to be the awesome thing. So Xamarin Forms 5 in the way that we have it now is coming to an end, let's put it like that. But it's going to be everything, every learning, all the things that the team has gotten over the past few years are going to be taken and put into .NET MAUI. Excuse me. And that's going to be awesome because, .NET MAUI is not just going to be the evolution of what Xamarin Forms is now, but .NET MAUI is also going to be the cross-platform strategy of Microsoft, right? Because it's going to be a first-class citizen in the .NET framework. And the beauty is that it will support everything that Xamarin Forms supports today. So sure, there will be some breaking changes because, one of the things is that the namespaces are going to change, and there will probably be some other stuff. But they are doing their best to make it as backwards compatible as it is, as it can be. So, you will have XAML, you will have MVVM, and there will definitely be a migration path from your Xamarin Forms application to .NET MAUI. So
I think like you and like David Ortno and everybody, I'm sure like you're tired of telling people like this is going to be fine. Your XAML and C# and your MVVM is going to be fine. Just migrate. You're just opening up more choices for developers.
Exactly. So that's what that's very spot on what you're saying, like right there, because everything that you have today in Xamarin Forms will be there, but the way this is going to be re-architected, it opens up the possibility to plug more in that. So think MVU style things, or I don't know, maybe some Skia drawn backend. That would be amazing. That's not in the plans, by the way, before I get pinned on something. But
you said it out on the internet.
Yeah.
It is
Oh
done.
no, rookie mistake.
No,
But
it's all good. Yeah.
it just opens all these possibilities, and that's the thing that's going to happen, and the name changes. So yes, I am sad as well that the Xamarin name and the Xamarin vibe. You said like, hey, we have all these people: Alan Ritchie, Jim Bennett from way back. James Montemagno, he's still here. He never goes away. But all those people from the community. Some of them now joined Microsoft, and that vibe is kind of going away. And to be honest, there was always a big cry for a new Evolve conference, which was the Xamarin conference before it was acquired by Microsoft.
You're bringing back so many memories here.
Yeah.
I love to Evolve. Yeah, but
so
again, like to your point, like maybe the moniker is evolving, but the things that we love, they all stay, and then we are just opening up the funnel. It's actually a fun time to be talking about this because, like you said, like .NET 6 preview just landed yesterday, and along with it, like comes the possibilities of mixing and matching. Like I mean, the way I see it with like .NET 6 moving forward, like it's .NET MAUI and Blazor, like two big things of innovation, and you're mixing and matching. Like now you can do mobile and desktop apps with Blazor, and with MAUI you can go to desktop. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Exactly. So it's just adding more possibilities for our end users, and I see it more like Xamarin Forms growing up and becoming like the real solution instead of a NuGet that you can install and kind of like a side project thing. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to come back to your question.
We can talk about like the future for a long time, but let's talk about what you are driving. That's actually super exciting, and that's the present state you can do right now.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Community Toolkit.
Exactly. So that was my next thing that I was going to talk about, because with all of that, so Xamarin Forms 5 will be supported for at least a year until after .NET MAUI is released, which is going to be November of this year. And at this time, Xamarin Forms 5, it will not see any major new development. So it will be service releases, it will be bug fixes, because they are all, the team is also very focused on getting this the most stable version ever. And I think they're doing a great job. But there won't be any new controls. There won't be any new major things coming in here. And then suddenly you said like this is released in January, so last month, or maybe a little bit earlier if you're looking at the pre-releases, and then until November this year. That's a long time with no real development. So that is one of the pillars, if you will, of the Xamarin Community Toolkit, together with the other part, right? Because I love the XAML. I don't want to, offend the people who think otherwise. We're all friends. But I like XAML, and with XAML, you have the converters, the behaviors, all those kinds of things that, are too small to wrap into its own package if you're just the only one using it. So you don't do that. What you do is just take that converter, you copy it, you paste it, you tweak it a little bit here, and suddenly you have 2 versions or 5 or 20. And that's something that we are trying to take away as well. We're trying to combine all these converters, all these behaviors, all these things that animations as well, that you might have lying around, put that into a convenient package so that you can just pull it down and have the same version that is perfect for everyone. So that is another thing.
Yeah, Luz, thanks for pointing out the GitHub repo. I was going to post that, but that is the open source repo. So essentially, you're trying to kind of serve two purposes. One is you're taking the most commonly used things that Xamarin developers, like in particular XAML developers, use with effects and behaviors and converters, trying to put them all together, but also letting the community drive it in terms of some of the UI components.
Yes. So coming back to that major development, so we have a couple of controls that have been missing for, if we're being honest, for too long. I'm talking about a camera view. I'm talking about a very customizable tab view. And there are other things. So one of the things that was also born out of kind of necessity is with Xamarin Forms 5, we still had a couple of experimental features. So you had to enable a little experimental flag. And with Xamarin Forms 5 being the final version for now, it would be weird for the controls that are not deemed stable enough yet to keep them in experimental, because they would never get out of that experimental state. So we had a couple of controls that moved to a stable state, which is fine. But we were left with, I think from the top of my head, 3 things that we were like not sure. They could be a little bit more mature. So also we moved those to the Xamarin Community Toolkit, but because it would be unfair to just take that from the people and say like, well, you've had your taste and now we're going to take that away from you.
Right. No, and I'm glad that you're being honest here, because again, we're amongst friends here, and the reality is like there are pains in every development stack. I think Luz was he said something in the past like, yeah, I mean, we have been through some of the pains of the early days where the developer cycle was not fast enough. We didn't have all of the UI that we needed, and that's all legit, because we are trying to give feedback and grow this together as a community to make sure developers are like as productive as we can be. So yeah, this is good stuff. Do you want to show something? I can bring up your desktop.
Absolutely, let's do it. And I'll just talk some more about all of that. So yeah, you can already see here a little glimpse into the future that I'm just going to look at. This is our sample app right here, which has all kinds of samples. But let's take it a step back, and let's start at where this all lives. So Luz already posted this URL. There is a little short link. I'll give you a little shortcut. I'll just paste it in the chat. I have it here,
please.
Which is all our famous AKA MS link. So aka.ms/xct.
There we go.
And we also have exactly. And if you want to know where are the docs, then you do xct docs, and then boom, you're at the docs. So we have those two. So like I said, we have a couple of things. So we have this very verbose description right here with all the converters and effects, la 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 la. So this is the Git repository where it all lives. We're still, we've been at this for a couple of months now, but we're still, putting up some stuff because it is the community toolkit, and me from the Microsoft side, and also Javier, if you're a little bit familiar with who's behind all the Xamarin stuff, he is still working on the Xamarin Forms team. We are basically driving this from the Microsoft side. And then I've asked a couple of people from the community who were enthusiastic from day one to help me out with this. They're already shifted some people because we're still in a pandemic and weird times, so not everyone has the time, which is totally fine and understandable. But it's definitely a community effort. So also, even if I'm working for Microsoft, this is not part of my day job anymore. So anything I do here is in my spare time, and that is something that we also want to understand about all the people that are working on this. So we are not going as fast as the actual Xamarin Forms or .NET MAUI team, simply because we don't have that power behind this project right now.
And wherever people can contribute, and like the chat room is talking about, we have Alan Ritchie here. So Alan writes a lot of components, and so does Gerald, so does Mods and everyone. So yeah, it's we all share the love that we are passionate about, and whenever our time permits. I mean, again, difficult times for everyone. We all have families and other things to take care of, but yeah, whenever you can contribute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and we're trying to do so much things. So we're trying to get this awesome library up and running, and together with that, we also want the doc, so that everything is discoverable and easy for people to get started. So we're trying to do a couple of things, which is pretty awesome, but also a lot of work. So all the code is here. We already have a good number of issues and pull requests, so there's a lot of activity going on.
I like the logo. Like you took the Xamarin X, kind of made it like a wrench and a little screwdriver.
Yes. So, and also this is like the perfect example of this community effort, because at some point, this was back when I was live streaming a little bit more as well. I'm not just before this episode, we were getting online. We were talking about this, that I couldn't really commit to a schedule for live streaming. So it's been a while since I did that, but it was at the starting time when we did this, and I said like, hey, we need a logo. So people just come up with it. We can probably pull up the issue for that. And this was actually a community contribution, which is pretty cool.
So I will ask you a couple of maybe slightly difficult questions moving forward. So if you just do XAML stuff today with Xamarin Forms, like we are so used to getting Xamarin Forms and Xamarin Essentials out of the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you headed towards like this right now is a NuGet package? Are you thinking of like David and everybody else? Are they looking to kind of bundle this in when you start a XAML project?
I did not at the time being. So I think that we're also getting into the conversation of like, where is this package going, right? Because right now this is primarily and focused on Xamarin Forms. That is clear, because we want to bridge that gap between Xamarin Forms 5 and .NET MAUI with a couple of big new features that people can use, together with just being necessary because we have to be the home of those experimental features that didn't make the cut. So that's who we are. Together with that, Xamarin Forms 5 is the last version, so there's not going to be also major updates in the templates there probably to suddenly include the Xamarin Community Toolkit. So that's probably not going to happen. So,
but this is as easy as it gets. Just get one NuGet package if you feel the need, right?
Exactly. And we have some. I'm totally not biased. We have some awesome stuff. So I think a lot of people, we see a lot of attention for this project, so that is really cool, simply because we have a couple of things. And also for some people who are using the expander or C# markup or media element, those people are simply forced to use this package. So we definitely have those too, but other than that, it's a choice. But we have all the converters that you probably want. We have all the things, so it's a logical choice, but it's still a choice.
So let me ask you this, because I think this is what we sometimes get in the trap. So XAML development, and I mean, I'm old. I've done a lot of WPF. I've done UWP. I've done Silverlight back in the days. I think we sometimes don't realize that we may have created unknowingly a little barrier to entry. Like it's a rich ecosystem, but if you're a brand new developer and you're learning this stuff, there is quite a bit of things to learn before you start really getting productive. So in the Xamarin Community Toolkit, like, could you explain really quickly what exactly is a behavior, what exactly is a converter, and then show us a couple of examples?
Yes, absolutely. So let me pull up this here to make that maybe a little bit clearer. So if we look at the project structure here, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. So we have the source right here. We have a sample app right here. The rest is not really important for people outside of trying to make things pretty with images. So whenever you go into the samples, you will find a regular Xamarin Forms application, as you would create one yourself. And inside of that, let me show the rest, because I've opened that one in my Visual Studio for Mac here. And whenever you do that, you get the actual Xamarin Community Toolkit source. So we've added this as a source. Also the markup stuff. And then, our sample. So this is our shared project, and then all the project heads, right? So that's basically your regular Xamarin Forms layout. And inside of this, we have a number of pages, and we've tried to, put them in folders, which is categorized within the behaviors and converters and whatever. So you can easily navigate this and find the thing that you actually want to find. So the thing that you're talking about, because a lot of this, well, not so much the behaviors and effects and that kind of stuff, but I think that the converters are very specific, usually to using XAML. So for the people who are unaware, XAML is this. which is XML based, and that kind of makes sense from the name probably, which allows you to make your layout based off of this structure instead of writing all kinds of C# code. Again, you can do all the same things with both. But it seems most people prefer XAML. Also from within Microsoft, I think it's preferred that you use XAML. But you can still do everything in C# if that's what you want. But yeah, then you suddenly find yourself in scenarios where you have this date picker with a date, and the date wants to have a actual date time, but the object coming in is a datetime offset, which is also an object within .NET. Which describes your date a little bit different depending on time zones and that kind of stuff. So what you can then do is inside of your code do all kinds of fancy things to transform that datetime offset into a datetime, or you can go to a converter, which is used like this. So instead of having to have a lot of code to do that transformation, you can have this converter do all the hard stuff for you. But yeah, I totally see where this question comes from. Like, whenever you are a newcomer, then there is a lot to take in. It's not just, it depends on where you come in, right? If you're already a C# developer, then, you're already at least familiar with that and you just have to learn all the XAML stuff. But if you're new to the entire .NET ecosystem and whatever, then you have to learn C#, XAML, MVVM, working with a new IDE, and then it's a lot to take in.
Quite a bit. Yeah, so like think about converters as a way in which you have some data that you want to bind to, but it's not exactly in the format that you want. So you, instead of copying and pasting that code all over the place, you write it in one place and you expose that out as a thing that your XAML can convert kind of automatically whenever you're rendering things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it kind of like, and that's thing, I think a thing that I hear from a lot of people being against XAML is that there is a lot of magic happening, because whenever you do this converter thing, then, whenever you look at the implementation for this, then you will see it's a bit cluttered with all the comments here, but it just has this method signature that is something you have to implement a certain interface, but this XAML engine, if you will then see like, hey, we've configured a converter here, so I'm going to take this value that you want to put in here. Data binding is another kind of those magic things. But I'm going to take this value that you're providing me here. I'm going to call this convert method and provide the value here. And then, inside of this method, you can do the actual conversion, and there's other parameters that you can use. But this is something that is like pure magic if you start working with it, because there's no tight coupling between how this convert is called. It's just done by the XAML engine for you. So I totally understand how that can be a little bit of magic whenever you start out with these things.
So how many of these converters do you have?
That is a good question. So let's go have a look at like the core library here. So we have a good number of these converters.
Quite a bit.
And it's as simple as like the inverted bool, which is always popular, because whenever you get that Boolean value in there, which is I don't know, is valid, and you make you want to make something visible depending on that, maybe an error message, then you want to invert it, right? Because whenever it is valid, you don't want to show it, and whenever it's not valid, then you do want to show it. So that, and then you can add like a property in your view model that will, have the invert value, but it's kind of nonsense to have one property just to invert it, right? So that's where you can bring in that converter to do that for you.
Yeah, and I see a nice list here. I mean, starting from the very basics to kind of some complex stuff.
Yeah.
And let's take a minute to address the chat room here. 3D Polyrate, you're right, and this is kind of a classic thing. Like I actually had my good friend Dan Siegel on the show last week, and we talked about Prism. A lot of MVVM, which is kind of a design pattern. It's got nothing to do with XAML C#, but it just works very nicely with this type of a code base. It's actually baked inside of Xamarin Forms. So my advice always is do what feels right. And if you're happy with what you have in Xamarin Forms, then just go with it. Like the memory leaks and all those things in C# are done now. But if you have a big enough code base, and if you start seeing the need to have more sanity in your team and you want to write more tests, then absolutely pick up an MVVM framework. So to me, it's more like, yeah, there is a lot to take in, but just take it in smaller bites. And I think the chat room was talking about a few other things, and Alan Ritchie does Shiny, which again, Alan, if you're listening, we should have you on to talk about Shiny. But yeah, and looks like Shiny, you will have support for that going forward as well in Maui. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on. So that's the converters. Now, what's next? Do you want to talk about behaviors?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that those are like, even with going back to earlier in the conversation where we are talking about the future, right? So little side story here. Talking about .NET MAUI, like I've got a couple of times the question like, hey, where is this going with .NET MAUI? And the short answer is, I don't know. I've also put it here on the wiki. It's the first question here because I got it asked a couple of times now. And, because .NET MAUI, I mean, sure, there is a plan on what's coming and what's going to happen. Maybe the backwards compatibility is that good that we can, very easily adapt this library to do that. But maybe, there will be some things in our toolkit that might not even be necessary anymore because, it's solved in the way Xamarin Forms handles things now. Yeah. But yeah, there is kind of the idea that, especially for the new controls that we have in here, like we let them mature in our toolkit, and whenever, maybe it's good enough to take that and put it in .NET MAUI directly. But the way I would see it at this point in time, if there is even a need for a toolkit on .NET MAUI, then it will be a separate thing. So, this will just continue to support Xamarin Forms forever and ever. It will just be an artifact whenever we look back in 20 years and say, "Oh, good times." And next to that, it can be an exact copy to start from with other namespaces, basically just like Xamarin Forms, but now with .NET MAUI, and we can see from there. But I think we should first see if there is an actual need for it. And also we have, let's not forget the Windows Community Toolkit, which is kind of the exact same pattern we're doing here, but then for like UWP and stuff. So we're also talking to them more of thinking about how we can collaborate, because with this, like I said right at the beginning, like this is going to be our cross-platform strategy from Microsoft. So that includes Windows as well, and WinUI 3 and all the things. So maybe we can find each other there and go into a collaboration and create one big community toolkit package for everyone. So that would be
and these are very early days. Like literally, the preview one of .NET 6 landed yesterday, right? So we have like 7 or 8 months to go before it's out live, and let's see. And like if we are doing pure XAML development on top of .NET MAUI moving forward, like these needs don't go away. I mean, you still would need some of these things, which again, based on what the runtimes is, like we might consider like an evolved NuGet package, which runs on the different runtime, but still gives you the behaviors and community, like the effects and the converters that you need.
Yeah. So and why I was explaining this is because the converters is something that we could technically share, I think, today with like the Windows Community Toolkit, because they are XAML based as well, and XAML is going to be XAML, and this should work for the other things as well. But the behaviors and the effects.
Those are Xamarin Forms specific.
Exactly. Those are very specific to Xamarin Forms. So that was what I was getting at. So the behaviors is kind of like born, I think, in the effects too. So to be honest, I'm still not sure, except for like the effect is doing more with UI and the behaviors is doing more with like the actual functionality. But I'm sure, I think if you were, really put your effort into it, you can do both with the same things. But anyway, look at the docs, what the actual.
Yeah. So
I think, go ahead.
Here's where I see things, because I have gone through some of the pain again, like with my like progress in Telerik background. The way I see effects is like before you sit down and write a custom renderer, which is quite a bit of work, think it through. Do you really need it? If it's just a UI tweak, if it's just a property on a native control that you want to just change, maybe you don't need to. So that's where I see effects. But behaviors is kind of more of a common like XAML type thing that you can use everywhere else a little bit in some form.
Right. So the effects, you mentioned the custom renderers, and it's great that we are able to do that because, the way, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, the way Xamarin Forms works, you have renderers. So basically, whenever you specify in your XAML, you want to have that button, it goes through that renderer, the button renderer, and depending on which platform you're running, it will know, hey, I need a UI button for iOS, and we're going to map this property in XAML to this property to the iOS button. And that's what the renderer does. So early days, whenever you wanted to influence that behavior, because we as in the Xamarin Forms team have decided for you which properties we're going to map and which APIs are being serviced on Xamarin Forms. But maybe the iOS APIs are going pretty fast as well, and Android and all the other platforms. And it's catching up to service all these APIs, and some make it, others do not. So whenever you wanted to use an API that is available on iOS but not serviced in the Xamarin Forms level, you would have to go out and create a custom renderer, or if you wanted to change anything in that renderer space, which is a huge undertaking. Again, especially if you're new, then renderers, you've just learned what the concept is. Now suddenly you have to write a custom renderer. What's that? So that's where the effects, I think, came in. Like you said, if it's only a small tweak, then you can get away with an effect. So that took away kind of that pain for the whole big custom renderer things. And talking about it, it might be this way. So if you're doing an effect, that might be, that custom renderer where you can influence, also the workings, but mostly maybe like how things look. And the behaviors is more like, you want to add functionality. So that might be, instead of inheriting a complete new control from the thing that you're doing, you can augment controls and behavior with just that behavior. So let's just look at something that we have in here. So I like this one, which is the user stop typing behavior. So imagine, actually, let's just pull up. So we have the sample app. If you run this solution, you will get something like this, where we have those same categories, and you can see how it's actually running. So we have the behaviors, and we have the user stop typing behavior. So I don't know about you, but I've created and maybe you have this in a control. I'm not that familiar. I should change that with the Telerik controls. But whenever you have that search bar and you have people typing, and you have to go out to a server to get the actual results, maybe you want to auto suggest or already show some results based on what they've typed so far, and you would. That is expensive, right? To go out for every character while they're not stopped typing. So what I implemented at some point was, they have some little timeout and then basically cancel the call. And whenever the timeout was actually complete, you would then make the call. But it was not super complicated, not rocket science, but it was a little bit of complicated code. And now we've wrapped this in a simple behavior, basically. So you can see we have this second, it's configurable. And we have the minimum length. That's also a good thing to use. So whenever I set this to 3, basically, you would have to have at least 3 characters. So whenever I do 2, nothing happens. And also, whenever I stop typing and never hit that second, here we go. No, typing, nothing happens. But when I stop for a second, then boom, you have a command that gets fired. And this is the moment where you would go out to your API and get something back. So this is something that you can just hook up. If we look at how this is implemented, basically, let's see.
Yeah, this is very nice because, again, when you think about some of these unique UX that you want on top of your UI, and I mean, from the experience of writing like a UI suite with our engineering teams, these are things that take a lot of effort. The tiniest of things for getting the UX right, it takes a lot of effort to do it right, and this kind of solves it out of the box, so you don't have to do it.
Exactly. So in this, just uses your Xamarin Forms vanilla search bar, so you don't have to make an inheritance or whatever. We don't make an inherited version just to add this. You can just say, hey, I want to add this behavior. And this is all, well, it looks kind of big because my font is big, but this is all that you have to do, basically. So the only things that we're hooking up here is the command that you want to fire whenever the timeout hits, the time threshold, so that's the second, the minimum length threshold, which is those 3 characters that I just configured. And then you can also say whenever you have like the on-screen keyboard, I don't know if I can simulate this. So whenever I bring this on and I put this one on and
Oh,
I say
nice.
I'm going to. Now I have to use this one, of course. So whenever I say this, it should go away whenever it's fired, right? So you also
Very
have
nice.
that thing like that goes away automatically. So
Hmm.
a very small behavior basically is very easy to use, but it can take away lots of code from your own code base. Just throw it out and leave the hard stuff to us.
Oh, absolutely. So let's take a quick pause and let's address some things that the chat room has been talking about. So we have talked to Alan Ritchie a couple of times. I'm talking about Shiny here, and Alan said he would love to come and talk. So yay, that's 2.0 is coming.
Yes.
And a few other comments here. Pratik 0508, yeah, started learning C#. Good for you. Good for you. Don't get bogged down with like so much stuff that you can find online. Just like start with the basics. I think the C# team, the docs team, does a phenomenal job of putting together stuff you can just write in the web browser itself, and that's how you learn C#. And then you dive into whichever platform that you want. Languages don't matter. It's just the concepts that matter. Yeah. And let me see what else. Lambda Prog was talking about there's a whole world beyond CRUD apps. MFC, well, I mean, it's your choice. Like a lot of what we write with Xamarin Forms, those are not just CRUD apps. You can write any type of app, but these are frameworks and design patterns, MFC, WinForms. So you can do all of that stuff still, and it'll run just fine on .NET 5. So choose what is right for you and your apps, right?
Yes, absolutely. So while you're saying this, I'm trying to pull up because that's the other thing, right? I don't know where this comment came from, like with the CRUD apps, right? But that always triggers me because that is from that perspective, it's good that we're changing the Xamarin Forms name because it always had that Forms kind of CRUD thing, right?
It's where it started. Like the first prototypes were forms over data. Yeah.
Let's be honest. It was that was the intention, right? Like, hey, you can do entries and buttons and that's it. But we've by now 5 years later, it's way beyond that. So all the UIs that I'm going to scroll over here are done with actual Xamarin Forms. So this I don't think anyone would have thought this was possible a couple of years ago. But I think this really goes beyond your CRUD apps and just get some data and show it in a list. This really has awesome designs right here. Probably some good Telerik controls in here as well. But this is pretty awesome. And I'll just paste this link actually here please. Because it also sums up all the features that are being used. So which controls, MVVM, it mentions kind of like the other NuGets that might have been used. Pancake view is a very
I love the pancake view. One. Yeah.
So yeah.
And 3D Polyrath, you're right. Like the little UX things take a lot of time in engineering to fix things right. Can you alter string format using a behavior? Yes, but it might be a little heavy-handed. I mean, you can also do like extension methods if you wanted to. But Gerald, do you have anything with strings?
We have a couple of things with strings. So I'm, of course, not sure what is what you want to do with this, but because you also have the string format right here, right? At least if you're using like data binding. So you're going to say binding and you're going to say like which property you're going to use. Again, this is a bit of magic. This requires a little bit of knowledge already, but if we do this, and we already have the string format here, right? So you can already play with that. And it requires a little bit of special syntax that I always seem to keep forgetting, but I think you can do like the special quotes, and you can just say 0, blah, blah. And then at the place of that 0, whatever you have in your by text property will be filled in here. And you can have your blah, blah behind that. So you can already do, and of course, the built-in string formats like with the decimals and the whatnots, the kind of like short format things can be used here as well. So if you do a small d or whatever, I don't know, I think you have to do something like 0, whoops.
Yeah, and then as you can see, like Lambda Prog and others, like if you're just starting, like we have been doing this for years, but we still have to go look up some things because like syntax.
Absolutely. So yeah, but do we have something for strings? Probably, but like you say, I think it's a bit much because we also already have some string format things inside of XAML. And it all comes down again to sure, there are some best practices and how people like to do things, but if you think like, hey, this is too complicated, at least for your first version, if you feel like you have other problems to solve, just create that extra property, format your string in that thing, and bind that. Just don't bother with XAML. Okay, the purist will think that's maybe not the right way, but you will learn that somewhere along the way whenever you find someone and tells you like, hey, maybe you should solve this way. And coming back to that community part, and we had someone say like, hey, I'm learning .NET and C#. So I can't say for the .NET and C# as a whole, but I know at least for like the Xamarin corner of the world, and I hope we can hang on to that, because I think that has been a very welcoming and awesome community where people are very helpful, trying to help each other, as long and that is the important key thing, as long as you do a little bit of investigation yourself and not just like questions like, hey, I want to write this app, how do I do it? That's not going to work. But at least as you put in a little bit of effort yourself, then sorry, my Bluetooth is reconnecting here, so that's why I'm behaving a little weird. But I think we're very opening and welcoming, and the community is really awesome.
And that has been the key for, I think, the Xamarin community. Like it's a smallish group of developers. If you look at the whole spectrum of mobile developers, but we are extremely passionate, and we want people to kind of help each other out. All right, so we looked at converters, we looked at behaviors, and it looks like you get quite a few behaviors in there as well. What else is in there?
So I think the thing that speaks to your imagination the most is like the new controls, right? Because that's something that you can see, that's something that you can work with. So we got a couple of those. We have like the avatar view, which is cool.
I like this.
Because you have those little initials right here whenever you don't have an image to load or whenever it fails. But whenever you do have an image, then it will load the actual image. So this is a pattern that you see a lot in modern day applications, right? Which makes it now very easy to use.
Some familiar names, and we have no idea who Xamarin Monkey is, but we'll let you guess. But this is pretty sweet.
So there is a bug right now. Again, I'm being way too honest, but there's a bug right now. So if I click on badge view, the whole thing will hang. So I don't know what that is, but it's pretty cool too, because we've added the ability to, let me open it in code. See, I could just go the route with, I'm going to show this one in code. I didn't have to be so honest. So let me get the sample page for that real quick. Here we go. Fuse badge view. Here we go. And you can wrap your view inside of that. So let me see where it is. Here it is. Badge view. Here's one. So you can wrap your label inside of a badge view, and then you can say background color, text, and then you will get that little red round thing on the top of your label. So this allows you to, by wrapping it in here, to allows you to add a badge to basically any view in your Xamarin Forms application, and you have the position as well. So you can say you want it left, right, top, bottom. You can do all the things. So that is also something I know. Maybe in the chat right here, there's always the question like, does this also work for the tab bar? No, it does not. Again, then we're coming back to the tab bar is hard to style. I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so this works for any other view basically.
Yeah. And in the chat room, we got Daniel Montelli saying, yeah, the touch effect is great. So you got some fans right here.
Yeah. So let's quickly dive into that one. And that's a aspect. We're quickly running out of time here. There's so much I want to talk about. But so this is really cool. The touch effect brings, for instance, like the long press, which is something that's not available out of the box. It's just one of those tiny paper cuts in Xamarin Forms that's not there that we are trying to solve. So long press, you can see whenever I do a short press, it does it here. Whenever I do a long press, you can see it does here. So we also have hover. This works, of course, not whenever you have a touch-enabled device, but whenever you have a actual cursor on that device, that will work too. So you can do a whole bunch of things. You can also use the built-in animations here, or like Daniel says, the native animations, you can enable or disable those too. But this is a library from Andrei Miljukovic. I still have to practice his name, but he is one of those core team members that I was talking about, who helps me drive this from the community side. And this is a library that he had long before the toolkit was a thing. But he says, I like this toolkit. I want to have people to have as much as in one package as possible. And also, let's be honest, we've said it before, life changes, life happens. So you might have different priorities, and you might still have a very awesome library that you now do not have the time to maintain anymore. And we are with a team, we are with a community. We have, because of Microsoft Power, we have a little bit bigger reach. So we are very welcome and opening to talking to you and see if we can take in that code. We've taken some other libraries too, and share that effort of maintaining your library while putting it into the hands of more developers. So that's really
absolutely
cool too.
And did I see this is backed by .NET Foundation now?
Yeah, we're part of the .NET Foundation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So camera view is one of the things that I mentioned, and again, I like being open, honest, and transparent. Camera view, we still have a few bugs to work out, but this is something I feel that is very important, and we definitely should get this right. It allows you to have this. It obviously doesn't work in the simulator, but it allows you to have your little camera preview just as a control, so anywhere in your screen where you want it, and take a picture or record a little movie or something like that. So the expander is a experimental that we got from Xamarin Forms. The styling could be better in some parts, but it allows you to expand sections of your list and nest those things. So you can have that accordion view. I think it's also known by that. Media element, play video and audio. Something that we just got is the pop-up controls by Andrew Hoofling. Again, I can't thank him enough for all his efforts, because it literally took months before this to get merged. This started in Xamarin Forms, and now he brought it to the toolkit. But this allows you to have basically these pop-ups with your the native APIs, and it allows you to have this.
This is really hard to pull off, because some of this is kind of bleeding over into the stuff like what we do with our engineering, and these modal dialogue things. The pop-ups take a lot of work.
Yep. And he's done this for iOS, Android, UWP. So there was a lot of effort going into this, and I'm glad that we finally got it merged and did the thing. So one thing, that's I think the thing I'm going to end on. So the tab view, I've mentioned it already a couple of times, because talking about pains of custom renders and stuff, I think a lot of people were asking for both the tab bar and the navigation bar, so the top bar, to be able to style that. And it's not that we didn't want you to do that, but it's just the native APIs are not very flexible. A tab bar on iOS looks and feels always the same way, and whenever you want to go beyond that, you would have to draw your own thing. And this is interesting, because that is exactly the thing that we're doing here, and that's where things are getting interesting also with .NET MAUI, because Xamarin Forms from originally you would map between the abstract layer and the actual native control. So whenever there was no native control, then it wouldn't be implemented in Forms.
Right.
But now you see that shift a little bit, that paradigm, to also go to, controls that we draw ourselves. We have the radio button now. The radio button is not a concept that is on iOS. It is on Android. So for iOS, we do our actual drawing ourselves. And the same thing for this tab view. We said hey, if you can style the tab bar on iOS the way we want it to do, we're going to invent our own tab bar. And suddenly we have cool looking stuff like this. We have, again, the styling could be a little bit better. We have hopefully designers for that, but we have rounded corners right here at the bottom. I'll get it a little bit here outside of the
Is this Skia Sharp, do you know?
No, this is all based on Xamarin Forms things. This is not Skia, because we do not want to take a dependency on Skia and also put that dependency on people. So this is all just Xamarin Forms elements. And you can scroll between these tabs.
Yes.
So you can see whenever it's selected or not. You can change the color of the font. You can even change the icons, and you can have that cool looking round button here in the middle and do things with that. So we suddenly got all kinds of options. You can do scrollable tabs, so whenever you have more items, you can just scroll through them. I know you can bind to them, so you can just pull down a list from your database if you want to, and make those into tabs. You can see that indicator down here. So it's crazy what you can do with this.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and since it's bindable, like you can do things like perhaps like enabling and disabling your tabs as well.
I would imagine so. To be honest, I don't know about that specific one, but you could definitely at least remove it. I don't know if we have. I think we have a PR or at least some kind of issue open for also like the Visual State Manager to have that supported. So if it's not available now, then it will definitely come. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. So anything else about the toolkit that you want to highlight that you're really proud to have inside?
Well, I'm just proud of how we're pulling this off, basically. So, because there has been a lot of attention and a lot of cool community members who have been pitching in, and I'm trying to do right by them by mentioning them and thanking them. And also, again, we're doing this in our spare time. So it can take a long time between opening a PR and someone finally getting to it and doing all the things. So, which is really hard because, I just want to give everyone the attention that they deserve because they are giving a part of their time to us to do all this and make other developers' lives better. So, I'm just thankful for all the people that have been pitching in so far. And I think we've been doing a couple of awesome, cool things in here that people have been waiting for a long time. So I just hope that we can continue riding that wave into .NET MAUI. That's a nice bridge right there. But in things of like, that's inside of the box. I think I saw someone commenting on, I will be using this for lazy loading with tabs, which is really cool. So we have the lazy loading tab here. But this is not specifically to the tabs. So this is not a very exciting demo unless you know what's going on behind the covers, basically. But this only loads whenever, this actually is shown. But for this, we have, I don't think we have a separate demo for this. We have created a lazy view based off the wonderful work of Jean-Marie, also known from the Sharpnado things. And basically, whenever you use this lazy view, you can just wrap everything in here, and it will only load whenever you tell it to, basically. So, then you can lazy load all the things and bring down that load time and whatnot. So this is not specific to the tabs, but you can use this for basically any scenario that you might have in your application. So that is really cool, too. And I saw something that I really quickly want to touch. Does pop-up support toasts? No, but we have the snack bar and toasts as a separate thing. So we definitely have that as well. So a lot of good stuff.
Very, very cool. And you hit up on some of the notes, like open source work. I think like especially in these times, it calls for like patience and empathy, right? And we are all in this together. There's no point in like bad mouthing anything or anybody. Let's just move things forward.
Absolutely. So and that's the thing, right? I can even understand that you're frustrated by you see other things getting solved and not the thing that's important to you because things are taking too long. I totally understand all of that, but be respectful, be nice. We are trying to do the thing that we can do too with the time that we have. We might have different information on the priorities that might not align with the things that you are seeing. I'm very sorry about that, and I wish I could do all the things that's important to everyone, but the reality is we can't. So, with the whole discussion with open source and everyone, just be kind, be thankful for the things we do have. And, it's open source. So if you see something, consider if you have the possibility to help out. because that is what open source makes possible. So yeah, that's what I always try to do. Be understanding, see their side of the story, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Hop on a call with you to explain our side of the story. And this is talking about open source in a more broader sense, because with the toolkit, we luckily didn't have anything like this yet. I mean, it's almost a given that at some point someone is going to be frustrated with something, which is totally fine. We can have a conversation about that and see how we can hopefully fix things, or we're going to say, we're going to be friends, but maybe this is not a project for you, and we're going to both go our ways. It's fine too.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Now, one last question here. Like the platform-specific heads that you have, like for Tizen and Linux, where are we? Like, does all of this stuff work?
It's kind of like the same with Xamarin Forms. Although they have, the official story there is that the support for Android, iOS, and UWP is done by Microsoft. And this is all done by community. And so the support is as is. Yes, we basically have all the things in place to support GDK, Mac OS, Linux, all the platforms that Xamarin Forms supports. Is everything implemented? Absolutely not. You will see the focus is on Android and iOS, UWP a little bit. Other than that, it's just, whenever the person implementing feels like they want to experiment a little with macOS or do something else, then we're lucky and we get the support for Tizen and that stuff. But I wouldn't count on it. Yeah, that's just the honest truth.
Yeah, well said. I mean, the Tizen part, they actually have a little more engineering help. So I think they're a little bit more,
the Tizen. Yes, so the Tizen team, I know from my time at Xamarin Forms, the Tizen team is so awesome because at they're Samsung, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were, whenever we had this big feature, I think it was Collection View or something. So boom, Collection View was there, and literally the next day they would come up with a PR and say, "Hey, here's Collection View for Tizen." What? They're doing awesome stuff. So I hope we can get some attention from them on this project as well, so we can at least get all the Tizen bits in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Daniel kind of wrapped it up nicely to say this is great. You can solve a lot of problems. You're helping out developers, and I've told this to Maddie and David and James and everybody on the Xamarin team. You might hear us complain sometimes because, again, we are trying for productivity. We are trying to get things right. We are thankful for what you do, Gerald, in particular, with this one not being a part of your day job, but you're trying to drive this effort and bring all of these separate pieces together into a single toolkit that we can just drop in our projects and start working. So thank you for what you do, and thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And just a quick note on the complaining, we're always open for feedback, and without that feedback, we can't make it better, right? So keep coming at it. The only thing I ask is, also a little understanding on our side and the things that we're trying to do, and just bring it in a nice, pleasant way. We're all friends. We can all have a constructive conversation, and that's all we need to do, I think.
Exactly. All right, folks. So you heard about the Community Toolkit. You know where to go and get it. I think Lewis had dropped the GitHub repo. Do a search if you want to. Xamarin Community Toolkit. It's easy to find, easy to just grab a NuGet, and you benefit from all this work that's been put in. So thank you, chat room, 3D Polyrat, Alan Ritchie, Danielle, Lewis, and everybody else who's been hanging out with us. We appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. And Gerald, thank you one more time to take an hour out of your busy day to come and hang out. This is Absolutely. Fun and exciting.
Let's do it again.
Yeah. All right. So, folks, I think that's going to be it for this Thursday's .NET Dev Show. Come and join me every Thursday. We do fun stuff, and we'll keep on moving the things forward for .NET devs. It's an exciting time with .NET 6 coming up in the horizon. So a lot of things to look forward to. All right. So with that, folks, that's it from me and Gerald here, and we shall see you on the next stream. So take care, be happy, be healthy, and we shall see you next time. Okay. Bye.